Hello, friends. My name is Daniel, and I'm 5 years old. My story is a little bit scary, but let me tell you exactly what happened. It all started one day while I was playing in my room. My mom came in and said, "Daniel, I'm going shopping and your dad is at work. Don't open the door for anyone until I come back. I don't want to stay here alone. Please let me go with you, Mom. I won't do anything to bother you." "Okay, let's go." I grabbed my mom's hand excitedly, and we left the house. We started walking towards the market, and my mom began buying vegetables while I stood next to her. Suddenly, a soccer ball hit my foot. I looked at it in surprise, then picked it up. A few seconds later, a boy ran towards me and took the ball from my hand, saying, "This ball is mine. Leave it. It's a beautiful ball that looks like mine. Can I play with you?" He nodded, and I looked at my mom, who was busy shopping, and said, "Okay, let's go. But we shouldn't be late so my mom doesn't get angry." We went far away from the market and started playing with enthusiasm and happiness. I didn't realize how quickly time passed. I said with fear, "It's getting late. I want to go back to my mom. She must be angry now." I left the boy and went to the place where I left my mom. But I couldn't find her. I searched everywhere, but there was no trace of her. I sat on the ground in despair after losing her. Then I saw a woman approaching me and saying, "Why are you sitting here like this, my beautiful child?" I was playing with the ball and left my mom shopping here. When I came back, I couldn't find her. Her eyes widened and she said, "Are you Daniel? I saw your mother here. She was screaming your name and looking for you everywhere. When she lost hope of finding you, she went back home. Will you come back to look for me again?" "I don't think so, but you can come with me to my house. In the morning, I will search for your house and you can go back to your family." I hugged her happily and said, "Thank you so much." "No, thank you, little one. Come with me." I held her hand, and we walked together for a long distance until we reached an old house. She stopped walking and said, "Is this your house?" She sadly replied, "Yes. I live here with my sisters and friends. We are from a poor class and we have no place to live except here." I nodded, feeling scared about what would happen. We entered the house, and it was old from the inside, with many people there. A girl asked, "Is this a new guest, Susan?" "Yes. He's called Daniel, and he will stay with us for 2 days until we find his family." The girl nodded, and Susan said, "You will sleep on this bed." "Okay, and in the morning we will go to my mom, right?" "Of course. Don't worry about anything and go to sleep." She nodded at me and left the room. In the morning, I woke up happy. I left the room and found Susan sitting there. As soon as she saw me, she started crying and hugged me, saying, "I'm sorry, Daniel. I don't know how to tell you this, but your house caught on fire and your family died in the fire." I sat down on the floor and started crying for what had happened. Danya went to the room and left me crying. Hours passed, and I was still in this state. Susan came out of the room with a harsh tone, saying, "Stop crying. They all died, and your house burned down. You have no place to go except here. You have to work like everyone else." "I haven't worked before. I was always playing," I replied. "That was in the past. Now you will work, and Charles will teach you." Then she called Charles loudly, and he came quickly. She told him to teach me how to work. Susan left, and Charles looked at me and said, "Come with me." We left the house and walked a little until we reached the highway. He gave me a piece of cloth and said, "Go to that car and clean its windows, then ask the owner for money." I took the cloth from his hand and went to the car with fear. I did as Charles asked, and while I was talking to the man, I saw Charles steal his wallet quickly. Then we both ran away. And after, I said angrily, "This is wrong! My dad told me not to steal because it's wrong, and we shouldn't do it." He laughed and said, "Your father is dead. Do as I do, or you will be punished by Susan, and her punishment is severe." From that moment on, Charles began teaching me the techniques of theft until I became a professional thief. After 15 years, I became a different person, a professional thief who was not afraid of anything. Today, Charles and I are going to steal from the house of a wealthy person. Are you ready, Daniel? I'm always ready. Let's begin. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Charles and I went to the house and entered through the window quietly. The light came on, and Charles said in a low voice, "I'll look here, and you go to the other room. It seems that no one is in the house, but be careful." I nodded and went to the other room, but I didn't find anyone there. Charles turned on the light and said, "No one is in the house, and that's good luck for us. Let's hurry before they come." Charles went to the safe and opened it, then put the money in the bag. I don't know why, but I felt something strange in that house. While I was checking around, I found a picture of a little child. I held it in my hands and looked at it absent-mindedly. Charles interrupted my thoughts and said, "Daniel, I'm done. Let's go." I put the picture in my pocket and we left the house. When we returned to our house, Charles placed the bag of money in front of Susan, who opened it and smiled widely, saying, "This is the real beauty, a big reward."
Charles and I entered the room. Charles asked,
"What's wrong, Daniel? You've been distracted since we arrived." "There's nothing. I just want to sleep." "Okay, but we have a task tomorrow, and we need to prepare for it." I nodded and went to sleep. The next day, we went to a house to steal from it. We snuck inside and started our mission, but suddenly we heard footsteps approaching the room's door. We tried to hide, but we failed. Then we heard the lady screaming, "Thief! There's a thief in the house! Help!" We tried to escape, but we were caught, and we were taken to the police station. The officer walked into the room and told the police officer they were caught stealing from a house, and all the stolen items are on the desk. The officer nodded and looked at us, but he stared at me for a while. He asked me, "What's your name, boy?" I replied harshly, "Call me Daniel." He froze, and I saw tears in his eyes. "Daniel, that's impossible. The name and the features are so similar." I didn't understand what he was saying, but he looked at his desk on our belongings. Then he grabbed the picture and said angrily, "How did you get this picture? Speak up." I didn't answer, so he grabbed my clothes and said, "Speak up, or I'll let you rot in jail." I started telling him everything that happened, and when I finished, he asked me, "Who are you, and where's your family?" I paused for a moment and said shakily, "I lost my mother when I was young, and when I tried to go back home, I found out they're all dead, and I don't remember anything about my family." The officer said, "Come with me," and he held my hand. We got into his car, and he drove fast. He stopped in front of a hospital and took me inside, saying to the doctor, "I want a DNA test right now." The doctor took a blood sample from both of us, and I didn't know what was happening. We sat outside waiting for the test results. The doctor came out and told the officer that the test results were a perfect match. My father hugged me tightly and said, "I felt it from the first moment that you are my son, whom I was deprived of for many years. I missed you so much, my son. I never lost hope for a moment of finding you." I started crying and trembling in his arms, saying, "You're alive, Dad. I can't believe this. I missed you so much. I want to see Mom." My father took me home, and as soon as I entered, I found my mother sitting there. She looked at my father and then at me. My father said, "We found Daniel, our son, after years of his disappearance." My mother stood up, her eyes filled with tears, saying, "I can't believe this. This isn't a dream, is it?" She hugged me tightly and started crying heavily. I cried with her. I missed them so much. After hours of crying and hugging, my father said, "Tell us what happened to you and where you were during all those years. We searched for you everywhere." I started telling them what happened to me. "We must apprehend Danya and her gang members. This is the least punishment they can receive. You deprived me of 15 years with you." My father ordered the police car to be prepared and told them the address, and they went there and arrested Susan and her gang members, and they were taken to prison. As for me, I returned to my home and my family after 15 years of absence. And here, my friends, my story ends. I hope you enjoyed it. See you in a new story.